Hello and welcome to the Habit Coach podcast. I am Ashdin Doctor, your habit coach, and today we're going to be discussing about the different kinds of sexual identities that we have or understanding what our preferences are, especially when it comes into the world of relationships. So today we have a relationship, dating, and intimacy coach with us. Aili, welcome to the Habit Coach podcast.
Thank you for having me.
I am super excited about this because it is a burning topic. You help people out with understanding what are the aspects of intimacy in their life, right? Like, what are some of the challenging cases that you get with people?
So most of my clients are couples who maybe have been married between, like, it could be between 1 year to 10 years. So there are multiple issues that that people face when they get married. Like, initially, if they haven't had sex before marriage, so they don't know what the other person is intimately like
Correct.
physically they don't know like what they enjoy, and there's a lot of taboo like talking about sex. So they get married and then they start having sex, and maybe both of them don't have experience. Maybe one has more experience than the other. And then, issues like, okay, this is not really working out. I'm not feeling what I'm supposed to feel. I don't even know what I'm supposed to feel. Is this right or wrong? That's like some examples. And then others, like, we've been together for 5 years. Maybe something has changed, but it's not exciting anymore, or whatever worked before is not really working right now. So what I do is,
And these are all separate categories, right? They're all deep in their own way.
yeah, yeah. I mean, the issues are, there are nuances to the problems people face.
Okay.
So a lot of them don't know what they actually enjoy. Especially people who identify as women, they are not really used to talk about desire. They are not used to talk about pleasure. They're not used to talk about sex. Like, sex has always been something that is, men can talk about, men are allowed to talk about. And if you're a woman and you enjoy, or like, can you actually say that you enjoy it? Or
Correct.
do you even enjoy it? Because you don't know, you've never been allowed to even speak about this kind of, like, is sex something that a woman is supposed to do or enjoy in the first place?
Correct.
So there is a lot of dynamics there. But what happens is that we learn our pleasure, or like our sexual selves, throughout our lives.
Okay.
We all experience, most of us experience arousal at some point, and usually that it can happen in the womb. Okay, it does happen in the
You
womb.
have
So
erections in the womb, etc., right?
yeah, so the pleasure that you get from touching your genitals starts from before you're born.
Correct.
Okay, then we get socialized and we see that as something wrong. um Now, it depends on what kind of experiences with pleasure or you have had as a child. At what point you felt aroused and recognized, what kind of reaction you got towards that arousal, as well as what kind of experiences you had emotionally and physically across your life. And all of these experiences will determine what kind of sex you enjoy, what turns you on. So nobody talks about this, but for example, if you have been brought up to romance or watching romantic movies, love stories, you understand arousal through that, and you might get turned on if someone maybe gives you a rose or reads poetry to you, and you would fall under what I call the sexual dimension of romance and love. But for example, if it's someone who has been exposed to porn from earlier in life or even later on, you might enjoy more graphic situation, more animalistic, more primal scenarios where there is a pushing, pulling of the body, biting, using of explicit words, or something that you have learned through porn. um, and I would call people who enjoy that, those who have a sexual dimension called passion.
Okay.
Okay, so I have kind of slotted them into groups, because with so many clients I've kind of figured that, broadly speaking, we all fall into these five buckets. Of course there are like many, and you can enjoy like one sexual dimension versus another.
And with
um
different partners, you could explore different aspects of this.
Also, yeah,
Mm.
yeah. So these are the two primary ones that we find very often. We have also people who get turned on by in connection to the elements like fire, water, nature, the soul. It's more a spiritual experience for them than for the ones who are even in love and romance. So
How would you define this one? This one's an interesting one. I haven't thought about this particular dimension before. So, how would you identify something like this?
Um, so a lot of people are drawn into out of the body experiences, tantra. You might have spent a lot of time in your childhood in nature, for example, or you might have maybe your parents or someone around you was very very spiritual,
Hmm.
and you connect to certain energies. Like, not we don't all do it. Like, obviously not everybody's sitting there like waiting to become a baba or a saint, but there is a way of expressing even arousal and erotic energy through spirituality.
Correct.
And for some people it just works out much better, and if they don't get that connection, they're not turned on.
Right.
Like, so if you put someone who's a spiritual sexual dimension with someone who's a passionate one, it's
It,
a
it
mess, it's
doesn't work.
chaos.
Yeah.
It's like one will feel disrespected, the other one will feel like completely turned off. One is talking about like, okay, I can feel the energy and I can feel your heart breathe and breath, and the other one is like, okay, I just want to like bang you on the table.
Right.
So that's, it's like different languages or expressions of eroticism, of arousal and pleasure. What you also have is people who get turned on by new experiences. Like, everything needs this kick of novelty, novelty and adventure. So they are novelty seeking. This could be by changing your partner, having new partners, having new sex toys, having, being turned on by new positions or new locations. Some people are like, okay, let's try it in the airplane, let's do it in a hotel room, let's do it like somewhere public, on the roadside or in a car. That works for some people, but for some it's like extremely frightening and stressful, because they need the comfort of a romantic setup, their own room, their clean sheets, all of that. So with partners who don't know about these things, like they don't really think about, okay, what is it that I enjoy really? When they first meet into the bedroom and they start having sex, then it's all over the place. And then you start saying, like, oh, I am not in love with this person, or how can I live with this person for the rest of my life? Is this is gonna be sex? So besides these, dimensions or sexual identities that exist, or the narratives that really turn us on, there are also like other.
Guys,
Sorry.
we need to get another time slot when Cyrus is not around. Clearly. You haven't been on Cyrus' podcast yet, no?
No.
That is one we have to set up for you.
Is that Cyrus the big
Cyrus
guy?
Brocha.
Oh, yeah. Oh, my God. Intense.
That'll be good fun. Okay. Sorry, you were in the middle of talking
Yeah.
about.
So besides these things, like, people don't know like how their bodies react to things. And what I mean by things is like, are you someone who just wants to shut their eyes and feel the sensations in your body and don't want any external disturbance? Or are you someone who actually get turned on by saying things to your partner, or like having your partner saying things to you? So these are sexual styles, of understanding what the body wants. Some people get turned on by seeing things, and therefore, like, it's important for them to have mirrors, or maybe they want to be seen, so they want others to actually look at them do things, and
Correct.
that's what their turn on is. And then there is a whole bunch of people who cannot have sex unless they are really involved with their partners. So partner focus extreme, like they will not be able, these are the people who will never be able to have a one night stand.
Mm.
So why push them into that scenario as well, right?
Correct.
So, like, usually now, if these are two, if a couple or a throuple or multiple people are into different sexual dimensions, like, how do you bridge that gap? And the way, or the method that we use, at least at the intimacy curator, is that we talk to people about the pillars of sex.
Okay.
So one is eye contact,
Mm-hmm.
secondly is breath. In
Mm-hmm.
fact, breath should be the first one, then eye contact, touch, words and actions.
Mm-hmm.
When I want to create, so you can actually recreate these moods and test them out with your partner.
Okay.
So if you want to have a passionate scene, like, what are the kind of words that you can actually use? What type of touch do you use? Like, a touch that is used in a passionate scene on a passionate dimension, it's more primal. So again, like, you might bite someone, you might lick someone, it's almost like you are this animal, and there is a lot of intense energy. So how do you even build that intense energy? Is through breath. Like,
Mm.
if you breathe deeper and faster, it's kind of you already create that passionate energy within your body. There is this fire that comes, and then you just have to, with your body and with your touch, kind of,
Release it.
express it, release it with the other person. Obviously, you have to be in tune, so you can actually build that up. And you can do it in a playful way, so it doesn't have to be serious, like, okay, I'm the one who only enjoys this, okay, let's try something,
Mm.
and we can do it with these tools.
Mm.
Again, touch, is it like a spank? Is it like a, pinch? Is it pushing, pulling? These are ways of building that energy. Besides the actions, again, like, you can throw someone on the table, you can be a bit more forceful. Obviously, it needs to be consensual, and you both need to agree that this is what we are playing out.
Correct.
Again, you can also change everything. Like, you can change the breath when you are in a romantic situation, so the breath is deeper, the eye gaze is softer, the words are more like, okay, this is, I love you, and I love being with you, and I love you're beautiful. So you use a lot the word love, and you can create that romantic scene. That doesn't mean that you need to feel the romance for the rest of your life and be in love with that person, but you can recreate that scene if it turns on that person.
Correct.
And then you have your kinks, your power dynamics. So even in those, the touch changes, because you might be using tools, for example, like you'd be using a flogger or a spanker, whatever, a pad, etc. And the way you will breathe is going to be more controlled. The eye gaze is more controlled. So you want to really control the entire energetic flow in your body to recreate a power dynamic, or like a kinky experience, which again is going to be very different from a novelty and adventure, or a spiritual one, where it's, you create the energy through breaths. And sometimes in a spiritual scenario, in tantric sex, you don't even touch each other.
Correct.
You just stay with the energy and breathe. So these are like tools that we use to bridge that gap, and for people to experience different things and different dimensions, and understand that it's not really who they are, it's just how they've learned. That's why it arouses them. That doesn't mean that you cannot go somewhere else and try something new.
Just because this was your idea of what sex is doesn't mean that you cannot try and understand a different dimension of what your
Yeah,
partner might think of
yeah,
as good sex or sex in general.
yeah. Like, ideally meaningful sex.
Meaningful sex. All right. Guys, if you haven't heard the other podcast, please make sure you listen to the other podcast, because that's all about meaningful dating. All right. So, meaningful sex. I like that.
Yeah, so meaningful sex, and this is just the outer layer of your behavior. So what you're gonna do, but is it why you do it? So what the most important thing is in sex, and any kind of like physical intimacy is why, the purpose,
Mm.
why you're doing what you're doing. Okay, so many people have different reasons for having sex, but usually they are connected to your childhood experience and unmet needs of when you were a child. So some people might feel, you know, that they want to be dominant. They want to feel dominant. Some people want to feel submissive. Some people want to feel playful.
Mm.
Some people want to feel loved and cared. So there are all these feelings that it's important for you to understand before you engage in any of this, like hanky panky spanky, romance, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, where it's coming from, right? That is the starting
Yeah,
point.
yeah. So, for example, like if you have not, if you were not seen, your parents maybe were very busy, and there was no enough attention for you. Maybe, you know, you grew up in an environment where nudity was not allowed. So that unmet need to be seen stays with you, and you start creating fantasies around it.
Mm.
Okay, and obviously you can, as a child, you cannot really go there and say like, hey, this is not really working for me, I'm leaving now.
Mm.
So you start fantasizing, and oftentimes you kind of connect these fantasies to your arousal, and that's why you have so many different things that people want to feel when they have sex.
Mm.
Now if I want to feel playful during sex, that playfulness can be expressed in these different ways. So you
Correct.
can be playful and spiritual, and create a whole scene around, playfulness and, running around the room, or like just touching swiftly, or maybe just going into some kind of visualization where the energy is floating around in the room. That's an experience that you can have. You can be playful in a kinky zone where you give a command, and there's a bratty sub. So there are all different dimensions. So, and you can play within all of them, as long as you know what is it that you want to feel.
Mm.
So, and these feelings are what, I mean, I call core desires don't change. All the way you express them can change, but what you actually want to feel during a sexual or a physical intimate encounter does not change.
So co-desire, that means that this is the desire of both partners, or all partners in that particular moment, or is it your own desires?
It's your own.
Okay.
It's your own. So you can establish what the desires are. They could be different.
Mm.
Maybe both of you want to feel dominant.
Right.
Yeah, and that's perfectly fine,
Mm.
because you can switch.
Mm.
You can do, okay, now let's do like half of the time I'm the dominant one, and half of the time you do the
Correct.
dominant one. Someone might have adventure, like, okay, let's address this desire,
Right.
my partner's desire, and then let's address mine. So it doesn't have to be like, okay, we just go somewhere and then we stay there. You can move around. That's why it's called, in the kinky world, it's called play, but that's what sex should be.
Right.
A playful experience, something to distress from working a lot, something to distress from like life responsibilities. And it's really nice when you do it with a partner, and you do it in a mindful way, where you know that this is what your partner actually wants to get. This is the feeling they're trying to get. This is how they express it, or this is how they want to be touched. They want to be touched softly. You know exactly which spots they want to be touched in, and how. You know exactly what kind of words will turn them on. You know exactly what kind of actions will turn them on. And then you can breathe together. You can like look into each other's eyes and just build on that erotic energy by adding the type of touch they want, the type of words they want to hear, or the type of experience they want to have.
This is very interesting because I know so many couples that have lost their interest in sex after like 5 years, 10 years, right? What are the first steps to bringing that back?
Hello, hello. It's been another great week on the IVM Podcasts Network. On Cyrus Says Cock and Bull, Cyrus, Shreyas, Abbas and Antariksh talk about the delay in Indigo flights as their crew called in sick on Air India Recruitment Day. On Postcards from Nowhere, Utsav tells us a fascinating story about the long room of the old library at Trinity College in Dublin. On All Things Policy, the Takshashila folk discuss immigration in India. On The Habit Coach, Ashdin tells us how to get rid of afternoon slumps. And on Smarter with Sid, Siddharth explores what a second skill is and how to identify one. Do not forget, IVM Podcast has just launched its merch and the first line is out now. Head to the IVM Podcast website, click on the shop tab to check out our first collection of t-shirts. Do follow us on social media. We are IVM Podcasts on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And remember, if you're enjoying this show or any of our other shows for that matter, please do tell a friend. Also, don't forget to rate us on any platform you're listening to. You can also check us out on YouTube. We're also doing a small listener survey to better understand how you respond to our shows and advertising on the network. We would really appreciate it if you could spare a few minutes to fill it. It helps us build better shows for you. And finally, we would like to thank our sponsors this week: Boat Lifestyle, Small Case, Cap Gemini, Intel vPro, and Intel. Future Banao Wonderful with Intel powered laptops.
Like, how should people, you know, it became monotonous after a while, then life took over. How do you bring back that? Uh,
Yeah, the intention needs to be there. Both of you need to want to bring it back. If it's just one
do you
person,
think that only one person often, like
uh,
when you
eh,
with your
I mean,
clients?
usually, like, it depends on what kind of mind frame they are. Like, it is usually one that feels the most, but I'm not saying that that's the only scenario. I mean, sometimes both of them realize, like, okay, it's not happening anymore. Like, what is going on? But yeah, usually it's like one partner, they feel like, okay, where is the fun is gone. We used to do it before. So I mean, often women after pregnancy, they're running around the children. I mean, we're still playing those very typical stereotypical and traditional gender roles here.
Correct.
Woman is taking care of the child for a number of years, and then uh, obviously, if you are in that sort of stress, you cannot think of fun stuff,
No, absolutely.
unless you schedule it and you feel it's important. Is it important to you? That's the first question. How important is this for you? Are you willing to work towards it? Because it will take scheduling,
Hmm.
you know?
In fact, children are the best contraceptives, right? Like, when child becomes so difficult to have sex again. Correct. And scheduling, like you said, right? Many people say, like, but that takes away the spontaneity of it all. But sometimes you need to schedule it, right?
You have to.
Hmm.
Like, it's like expecting that it's gonna be the same
And
across
spontaneous and
no, it's you have to work towards that.
yeah,
Like, either you have an understanding that, okay, we are taking time for this because it's important for us, and like you do with dates, it's like you schedule your dates also. You need to make time for you to be relaxed, for you to be out of the family zone, especially where it's like when sometimes you have a group of friends and you meet after you get married and have a child. You meet them every like 6
yeah,
months, and then you sit in a bar like drinking, like, oh my god, like this is my only form of release. Like, why live a life like that? Like, schedule at least something every month, like every couple of weeks. And same thing with your partner, because having a drink is great, sure, but having sex is natural, and it gives you much better and healthier highs than half a bottle of whiskey or whatever you drink.
correct. And as soon as you add that word play to it, like you said, like, when you think of sex as play, it changes the dimension of it. It doesn't need to be spontaneous anymore, right? You can have a play date, like how you set up for your children. You can have your play date and you're like, all right,
Exactly.
we're going to play from 4 to 5 and this is what we're going to do. And it actually works that way. It's not necessary that has to be spontaneous and just like poof.
Yeah, if we can regulate playtime for our kids, then why can't we regulate playtime for
And we're
ourselves?
all big babies after all. Aren't we all big babies? Exactly. It's lovely. So, you were talking about those 4 elements. I just wanted to go back to it right in the beginning of the podcast. You're talking about breath, you were talking about touch, you were talking about
Eye
eye
contact,
contact
actions,
and
words.
words. Is there a hierarchy? Like you said, breath is super important. I know breath
Yeah.
is super important. What would be the others be?
I think to build it slowly and naturally, definitely breath is number one.
Mm-hmm.
So you can either breathe together. Ideally, like, if you want to recreate a romantic or a spiritual scene, you can breathe together with like placing your hand on your heart and just synchronize the breath, like either breathe in together and breathe out together, or like breathe in and the other person breathes out. So you form a circle of breath.
Mm.
Okay, once you start attuning to the other person through breath, then you focus on eye contact. Although these things will happen simultaneously,
Simultaneously.
but you can also build arousal. There are several breathing exercises to kind of build erotic energy within your body,
Mm.
like through squeezes or through releases. And you can kind of visualize that energy going from your genital or from your arousal areas through the eyes into the other person. So you start creating that attraction and
Mm.
silence. You know, how many times, even on a date, I tell people, like, just be there and gaze at the person in silence. You don't have to say anything, you have to do anything. The energy is going to do it on its own. So that eye contact and breath are like foundational, like in any circumstance. If you can regulate your breath during sex, brilliant. Most
Bring
erectile
it down or bring it up?
well, see, bring it in sync with your partner
Okay.
will enhance the experience.
All right.
A lot of people who face sexual issues, like, or face challenges like erectile dysfunction, premature ejaculation, or not coming at all, it's because their breath is being altered by either anxiety or stress or their thinking brain. So first step, even for those challenges, is breathing. Regulate your breathing and bringing the awareness back to the body. So you are doing a physical kind of um, uh, exercise, or you're engaging physically. So it's important that you are in your body and not in your head thinking about stuff, because
Interesting.
that will kill the arousal completely.
Right.
It will kill the connection. So the breath helps you bring you into the body, and the eye contact makes you, deepen that sensation of being there with someone.
Mm.
After that, you can start using words. In fact, like, actions are in between words and touch, especially genital touch. So genital touch, even sexually, needs to be last.
Right.
It's like really the last resort, and not always is needed
It's not
also.
necessary.
Yeah. So after you've gone through words, things that you say to arouse someone, and you will have to kind of negotiate that, because some people love to hear certain things, other person loves to hear opposite.
Correct.
So how do you create that rhythm? And once you've built that erotic and tension, and then you can talk about things that arouse you, then you can move into actions. For example, what are some of the actions that you want? Is it like a command of making someone stand in the middle of the room naked and just walking around them? Because that's already arousing. So
Correct.
that's an action. Is it like holding someone by the wrists? That's also an action, right? Now, with respect to touch, it's important to also communicate, like, what is the touch that the other person enjoys. So once you've added words, you're already in a zone. Once you've added breath, eye contact, and words into this mix, and you start touching someone the way they want to be touched, you also have to enjoy the touch in your hands. So you have to make sure that your hands are actually expressing that erotic energy that exists already in your body, that is flowing. So again, it's about understanding and being aware and mindful that this is the energy. It's coming through my eyes, it's coming through my breath. Now it's coming through my
Hands as well.
hands, sometimes feet.
Right.
Some people like touching feet. Sometimes it's like body parts.
Mm.
So
Forehead. Yeah.
yeah, so it's like you can touch any body part with your hands, with the back of your hands, with the front of your hands, with your elbows. So experience touch in its fullness across the body. And then last, maybe genital.
Yeah. Irrelevant.
Like, last.
You know, when we talk about this, right? And I know that people will be listening to this saying that I've never thought about sex in this way.
Mm.
I've always known, for lack of a better word, vanilla sex, which is like penetration and you're done, like 30 seconds. How do you have that conversation with your partner to take it to this? Like, where do you even start? Like, oh, I heard this podcast. And then what? Like, the other person go, no, no, nonsense, nonsense, rubbish, rubbish. Like, how do you even begin that conversation with somebody?
Yeah, again, I mean, you have to really be confident about the fact that it is important for you, because there'll always be someone who will rubbish it off.
Correct.
So the moment, and that's conditioning, right? Now, do you want to stick by that conditioning? Are you okay living in that conditioning, or actually saying, like, this is really important for me?
Mhm.
I always give the example, like, when your partner is there and you are taking a decision like buying a house,
Mm.
how important that is with, like, or buying a car and you really want that car. So you, somewhere or the other, unless you are in that sort of relationship, and then that's something that you should look into,
Mm.
you will buy that car because there's nothing wrong in it. If I
Correct.
have the money and everything is set, then why shouldn't I not buy a car, for example? Same
Or
thing.
have a say in it, or at least have a question in it, or at least bring up the topic.
Yeah, it depends how important it, if it is very important for you, then the way you approach the topic is like, I've heard this,
Mm.
I've heard about this car, let's look at this car together on the phone or online, let's see what are the features, I really want this, can we try it out, let's go for a test drive.
Mm. Love it. I love the analogy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I saw this the other day. Will we try it out? Let's do a test drive.
Exactly.
Let's test drive your sexual preferences. I love
Mm,
it. Okay,
mm.
super. Um, any last thoughts on this topic that you wish that we could cover? Like, what are one burning thing if you could, shake the listeners up and say, do this, like from tomorrow onwards, think of your sexual, um, you know, wellness, and from this point of view, what would it be?
Yeah, definitely, like, just forget this penetration business. Like, I especially, like, I'm just speaking from a obviously heterosexual point of view, although I myself, I'm not like, I'm bi or like pan, whatever. But the obsession with sex being penetration just needs to stop. Like, there is so much to it. There is so many, research pieces that say that 80% of women, orgasm through clitoral stimulation. So, like, you don't have to put anything inside. So there is no need for you to feel pleasure, to start worrying about your size, about the duration, about your skills, positions. None of that matters. What matters is pleasure. Is the other person experiencing pleasure by just like being caressed on the face, on the lips, or being said certain things that can bring so much arousal and pleasure? How, what is working for you also? Like,
Correct.
is maybe oral sex better? Is it like hugging better? Whatever brings you pleasure. So shift definitely from from penetration to pleasure, like from what you understand sex as pleasure. Also, like, foreplay, what does it mean? Like, it's before something important needs to happen. It's not something, it's everything is a
Part of
sexual.
flow
Yeah,
foreplay.
it's everything is like, I don't know if whether it should ban that word also, because it just gives that sense that this is something before the actual main course.
Yeah.
It's almost like your starter.
Like I keep telling my friends that foreplay should start 2 days before, right? Like foreplay is all that build up to
Yeah,
when you're supposed to meet a person. All
yeah,
of that is part of foreplay,
yeah,
and like the whole play can be foreplay. That's the
yeah,
whole point of it.
yeah, yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Um. Yeah. So you were continuing with this before we went on to the foreplay tangent.
Yeah, so the focus is on pleasure. uh
Should the focus be on arriving at an orgasm?
Not necessarily,
Correct.
no, no. I mean, for some people, the goal is more important than the journey.
Hmm.
But we've heard it so many times that the journey is much more important than the goal. So,
Enjoy the process.
yeah, enjoy the journey. The
Right.
journey has to be pleasurable. It's good for you, okay? It's actually good for you. It's natural. It's better than smoking a packet of cigarettes. It's better than like drinking half a bottle of whiskey. It's better than being on your phone for like 5 hours scrolling on images, Instagram images.
Correct.
Your sexual experience is with your body, and the pleasure you're giving your body is going to help you de-stress from daily life.
There would be no wars if everyone was having mindful sex. Correct.
Ah, yeah. I swear.
I love it. Okay. Ali, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. How can people connect with you?
Okay, so you can find us on Instagram, the Intimacy Curator. We also have a website. You can DM us and like book appointments. Yep.
Fantastic. I'm sending a friend of mine to you.
Yeah,
All
please.
right. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Thank you.